Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken?
Hey, Kiernan.
Oh my gosh, Ryan, it has been so long since I've heard those melodious tones coming through my earphones.
Yeah, well, it is, I sound so fresh in the morning, so the audience is like, whoa, Ryan just sounds so alive, and it's because I just got back from a long trip.
Yeah, you're sounding weary. You're looking like you were trapped on like a desert island for a few months. You've got a really salt and pepper beard, maybe a little more salt and pepper than I would have expected.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know that it's salt and pepper. I do. It's my Justin Trudeau is what I call it.
It's mostly salt, actually, now that I'm looking at it closely. But before we talk about all your adventures, Ryan, and you know, last week we had said that this week would be about your city guide to Medellin, which was one of the places you've been out to over the past couple of weeks. But you and I decided that it was more important for us to address this week a growing topic in the news, which is the Australian wildfires and its effects on travel. So we're taking a pause on Medellin. That's going to be next week's episode. This week, today, we are featuring an episode that explores how the wildfires are affecting travel if you've got travel coming up or if you're considering going to Australia. And I have an interview with New York Times journalist Tariro Mzezewa. And she has an article all about where you should be checking, where you can be going. And the good news, I'll just give you a quick peek. The good news is you can still go to Australia despite the scale of the tragedy that's going on there.
Really, because on the internet, it looks like, it looks like such a catastrophe that the entire continent is under these fires. But you're saying that there are places that are not affected.
Yeah, so we do a deep dive in the interview all about what's affected, what's not affected, how companies are dealing with it. And so that'll be coming up shortly. But, Brian, I do have to ask, how were your many travels around the world over these past? How long were you gone? It feels like 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
I was months? I was gone over 3 weeks, so like 3.5 weeks.
I mean, that is a real vacation. That is some job you've got over there.
It's a work vacation. It's a workcation. So we.
God, that's such a horrible millennial term.
we started in Mexico City. Obviously.
Sure. Where every one of your vacations is required to start.
And then I bopped over to Puerto Vallarta, which is a fantastic Pacific beach town in Mexico. And I think we should do an episode about that at some point. And then I went from Puerto Vallarta on Christmas Day. Great flight. Very, a lot of happy people on that flight. Puerto Vallarta to Medellin. And then I was in Medellin, and that's what we're going to talk about next week. And I was there for a very long time, both with friends and by myself. And then I popped over for a night or two in Bogota just to get a cheap flight back to the States. So here I am. Yeah.
A cheap flight. Now, that's interesting because you so often mock me here for the fact that I'm a WOW Airlines rider, that I love Southwest.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming when I picture you taking these trips, I figure you're probably buying business class, first class, because you always kind of have this kind of premium air about you. So presumably you were on Delta, something similar.
But just because of I'm flying back right after the New Year, I flew it's called a sprocket, a sprint. Sprint, is that it?
Oh, you're thinking of Spirit.
Spirit. Oh my! I actually thought it was Sprint. The first two were jokes, and the third one was the real one. Spirit. Yeah,
Spirit.
It's great because it's like a Greyhound in the sky.
I mean,
and it just gets you there.
I honestly think that I might have more faith in Greyhound than I do in Spirit. I used to go back and forth to Detroit for work a lot, and I always had the choice between a Delta flight and a Spirit flight.
Yeah.
And the Delta one was like 4 times the price, and I had no status. And on Spirit, I could be like, absolute king of Spirit because I could, here's an extra $25 for the extra leg room. And, here's $50 to actually check a bag. And, I think I want a bottle of water. So here's another $50.
You gotta watch out for those bag check fees because they'll charge you to bring a bag, to check a bag.
To look at a bag.
Yeah, if you have a hat on, they're like, well, that's a hat fee.
It was clearly a bag, sir. Take it off your head, turn it around. You could put something in that. That's a bag.
And, a lot of airlines, they give you free alcohol for international flights.
That's right. Yeah.
What Spirit does is they charge you even for Coca-Cola on an international flight. There's nothing free going on a Spirit flight. You were paying, and there's no power cords. So for a 5-hour flight, it's like even the Greyhound has power cords at this point, guys. Where are you buying these planes from, Spirit?
Well, that's really something. Well, I mean, I've never taken a Spirit airline that goes that far. So, do they have meal service?
I think I slept through the meal, but I'm imagining that I didn't miss anything.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
the Coke was good. So I mean the Coke in Columbia. I mean, oh no.
Well, listen, we are happy to have you back. No question. We're going to have a couple great episodes. Medellin coming up. We'll talk about Bogota. We'll talk about your adventures in Mexico. Probably another Mexico City episode due here in 2020.
Definitely in 2020. Yeah.
I mean, they're very popular. You're always finding. I like that you are always finding these new corners of Mexico City because you know it so well. You can only find those parts of a city when you really, really know it and spend a lot of time.
If folks don't know, Mexico City Part 1, my first, is the second most popular episode ever. There's an outlier, which is unfair, so we cut that off.
Yeah,
and
Bhutan.
Yeah,
just a little more exotic and impressive, I would say. But we've got a great 2020 ahead. And Ryan, that occurs to me. This is our first episode together of the new year, so I want to wish you a happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I appreciate you, picking up the slack.
And there's a lot of slack. I mean, week to week, most of the show is you slackening and me picking it up.
Well, I think the audience likes that back and forth.
I mean, a couple of kind of just bookkeeping things for the new year. First, we want to thank our audience for sticking with us here on Out of Office. 2020 is going to be a big, exciting year. We've got lots of stuff planned. As we mentioned, after we do our Medellin episode, we're gonna tackle some Canadian destinations because no better place to go in January than Canada. And we're working on lots of great interviews and fun topics for the year ahead. And of course, if you have an idea for something you want us to tackle, or you have a question or something you want us to address on the podcast, send us an email at outofofficepod@gmail.com. We respond. We check it every day. And we love hearing from you.
And thank you to the audience because December was our most downloaded month ever. So it means you like us more. You're not getting tired of us. So
and beyond that, though, because we see how many people are listening, we know that some of you are out there not rating and reviewing us, and we could really use those boosts. We're doing well, especially on Apple. But wherever you listen to the podcast, go give us 5 stars, write a good review, let others find us. Because really, there aren't many travel podcasts out there. And we think that we want to be, at the top of that pile.
Absolutely. So give us the old 5 stars, give us a little comment, and we'll appreciate it.
So we were asking for your input. Let's see, we've did rating and reviews. And of course, you can always see beautiful pictures about everything we talk about over at Instagram. We are at OOO Podcast. That's out of office, OOO. So at OOO Podcast. And also, you will look at the beautiful pictures and you will say, ooh, podcast. So it works on many, many levels.
Now, before we jump to the interview, Kiernan, is it my understanding based on this script that you've made a mistake?
So I do hate to begin the new year with
you end the new year with an error. You begin it with whatever.
Well, this one. So first, yes, we have a recalculating. So let's hit the recalculating. Recalculating. All right, Ryan. Well, you know what recalculating is. As you've alluded to, you often blame me for an error, but this is where we revisit a topic. Sometimes it's to correct, sometimes it's to add more context or an update. In this case, this one hits close to home, which is, you and I talk about WOW Air a lot, the adventures of WOW Air. In fact, there's a little new WOW Air news, which is apparently WOW Air is going to be opening a cafe in Washington, D.C. But I don't want to get into that today, but I just want to let you know that. I guess
that'll be a mediocre cafe, folks.
I just love that they're still trying to figure out the airline business. So let's put some resources into a cafe. But I had mentioned last month that my brother Brendan, a loyal listener, had said to me, Kiernan, you know what? Little much with the WOW Air. Maybe it's time to cut back on the WOW Air. But he has written a follow-up to me. I promised him that I would just read it exactly as is. So let me just read it to you.
All right.
Dear Ryan and co-host. So he's cleverly calling me just co-host instead of talking to me. Love the podcast. Long-time listener. I'm writing you in order to correct the misinformation with which Kiernan is clogging the airwaves. It's episode number 58. Kiernan said that I told him that I had enough of the WOW airline updates and that I would appreciate you guys putting it to rest. The statement is completely false. Fake news. No listener is a bigger fan of WOW airlines than me. I am told that he is a new father, so I understand that Kiernan is suffering from lack of sleep, and this may be affecting his memory. Perhaps the years and years of Purell overuse is finally paying its toll on his memory. Maybe he's lashing out because he hasn't found a good natural wine bar near his new house. I'm not totally sure why he lied about this, but I just want to get the record straight, and thank you, Ryan, for all the hard work you put into the podcast and in keeping Kiernan honest. A lot of layers there. He's poking fun. Sincerely, Brendan, Kiernan's favorite and WOW-loving brother. So I read
Is he your favorite brother?
That's not something I'm going to commit to the airwaves. I love all my family members.
You come from an Irish Catholic family, so I think you have 14 brothers.
He's one of my top 3 brothers. Yeah. That's what I can say.
Yeah.
So I just want to correct the record straight. Listen. That just says 2020, this is going to be the year of WOW airline updates, folks. We may need to get a sound effect because clearly Brendan's on board and we listen to the fans when they ask for more information. So thank you for that correction. Brian, with that, I think it's time that we get right to my interview about the Australian wildfires and how it's affecting travel.
Okay, that means it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
I'm joined today by New York Times journalist Tariro Mzezewa, who recently wrote a piece entitled What You Need to Know About Traveling to Australia During This Fire Season. Tariro, thanks so much for coming on Out of Office.
Thanks for having me, Kiernan.
So I want to start by talking about the size of the fires. And I thought, one thing that helped put it in perspective for me was considering how big Australia itself is. And especially, a lot of people are seeing imagery of these fires burning. You could see it from space. And the one thing that really hit me for the size of the country is that side to side, Australia is about as wide as the United States. So Sydney to Perth is approximately the same as New York to LA. So it's a giant country. And these fires are, appropriately also giant. So I'm wondering, in doing your research, could you describe, how large are these fires? And are they affecting travel all across Australia?
That's a great question. So one description that put it in perspective for me that I found really helpful was by the writer Richard Flanagan. And he said that the amount of land that the fires have burned is almost as large as West Virginia, and it's more than triple the area destroyed by the 2018 fires in California, and 6 times the size of the 2019 fires in Amazonia. So that should give us some perspective. But Australia, like you said, is a huge country. So there's still plenty of reason to go. The fires aren't burning everywhere. And there's a lot of stuff you can still do. There are a lot of great destinations that are still open for business. And even in some of the regions like New South Wales, where the fires have been, there are towns there where you can still go. There's cities that you can still go to. And, Australia's tourism board is still encouraging people to visit. And the U.S. State Department has, increased its warning to a level 2 warning, telling people to take caution, but still saying you can go. Nobody's saying you shouldn't go. And we actually just published our 52 places to go list. And on that list, we have the Kimberley region in Australia. So you should still go to Australia. No reason to cancel your trip. Just, be cautious.
And I'm wondering, given that Melbourne and Sydney are really the 2 most popular cities in the country, I don't have a sense of how much are the fires affecting these big cities, which are so often the tourism centers?
I actually spoke with one of my colleagues who is from Australia, and she was saying, for a lot of people there in the cities, it's still day-to-day life, right? They're okay. And in Melbourne and Sydney in particular, the fires aren't taking place right there, right? They're typically in more rural areas or further out. However, their air quality is being affected. So that's something to think about if you're going to go. So in Melbourne this past week and in previous weeks, people actually rushed to buy P2 and N95 smoke masks. So if you're going to go, if you can get your own, it's worth getting one because people are rushing to get those and they realize that's important.
So you have to add that into your carry-on list if you're on your way there.
Oh my gosh, yes, but definitely worthwhile.
And so I'm kind of a hyper planner when it comes to travel. And if I had an Australia, vacation booked right now, I know that I would be just desperate for the most up-to-date information. I'd probably be refreshing the New York Times over and over again to see, daily updates. Where would you recommend the most reliable resources for updated travel information?
Oh my gosh, there's so many great sources. I think, there's certain sources that you might assume are just for Australians, but I think could be really helpful even if you're here. One thing to check out is the Fires Near Me app, which was developed by the New South Wales Fire Service. And I think that's helpful if you're planning to go anywhere in New South Wales. And you can have a look even from here and see, you can pull it up onto your laptop or look at it on your phone and see where the fires there are. That's quite helpful. But also checking, the State Department page that I mentioned earlier, the U.S. Embassy tweeted over the weekend, and they're continuing to tweet updates. The New South Wales Fire Service actually has been updating on Twitter very regularly. And I think they're incredibly helpful. ABC, which is Australia's main broadcaster, is constantly updating. And then there are also some other resources like the ACT Emergency Services Agency, the New South Wales Rural Fire Service, the Northern Territory Fire and Rescue Service, and more of those, more focused on specific regions as well.
So I'm thinking about the businesses that support tourism in Australia, and particularly I'm thinking of airlines and cruise companies. And I'm wondering how they are dealing with the fire. I mean, are they even running?
They are. So major airports are open. Airlines are still flying all over Australia. In fact, some airlines are actually trying to help with the effort to get workers to places. So Virgin Australia said last week that they have a partnership with the Salvation Army Emergency Services, and they're providing support by offering flights to emergency workers who are being flown to affected areas. And United Airlines also said that it is helping with a fundraising campaign. And if you are a Mileage Plus member with United and you donate more than $50 or more, you'll receive up to 1,000 award miles from United.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And on the point with cruises, cruises are still running. So if you're nervous about traveling, I actually think it's probably harder to get your trip canceled if you're not going into an area that's directly affected. Like if you're flying into Sydney, even though Sydney's in a state where there are fires, there are no fires in Sydney. It's going to be pretty tough to get your flight canceled on the basis of the fires. And that's also something you should think about with your insurance. Like if your trip is insured, go read that fine print because a lot of plans aren't going to cover this.
Yeah, it's good clarification because the thing that kept coming up in my mind, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, is in 2010, Iceland had that volcano explode, and it sent up smoke and ash into the atmosphere. And I remember it grounded planes, around the world, but especially between Europe and the U.S. And I was wondering, is this billowing smoke so bad that they can't fly through it? But it sounds like that is not the case.
That has not been the case. And I actually had posed that question to a number of people because I assumed if the air quality is so bad. And another resource actually to check out is the world's Air Pollution Real-Time Air Quality Index. If you just type in Real-Time Air Quality Index into Google, it'll pop up. And for Australia, it's color coordinated and it gives you an idea of the air quality in all these different places. And in some places, it's reached as high as 900, and pretty much anything over 200 is considered hazardous. So I assumed it was you wouldn't be able to see and you can't travel, but that's not the case. So definitely reach out to the airlines, but also check the air quality index. Keep checking for updates and see if things change. Of course, things can change pretty quickly, in which case it's definitely worth reaching out to the airline and trying to change your itinerary.
Yeah, and that's especially a good precaution because this is really on the earlier side of the fire season. So this can go on for at least a few more months. I think through the end of February, they consider the normal season.
I think it actually could be March or April.
Wow. And I'm wondering, are there any other sort of precautions that potential travelers to Australia should be taking? You know, we've given a lot of places that folks can check for regular updates on air quality, on the state of the fires. Anything else you'd recommend?
I would say just stay updated and I think the biggest thing is to not be too worried or, feel like you shouldn't visit. I think sometimes we have a tendency to hear of a country and we assume like, oh no, can't go there at all. But it helps to think about it in the context of the United States. Like it's a big country. There's so much to see, so much to do, but keep checking those updates. I think like that State Department page is really helpful. Like the Australian tourism page is also helpful. And if you go to a lot of the airline pages, they're also updating. There's so many resources available to help you keep planning your trip, change things if you need to. And I should add that, when I spoke with all these airline representatives, everyone said we're keeping a close eye on it. So if it gets bad, I'm sure they will help people out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the comparison you quoted is exactly the right one, which is if I know the size of the United States, and even if the fires are enormous, they are the size of West Virginia. When you think of the entire United States, that is a pocket of danger. Exactly. And so I agree that, it's probably more important than ever for folks to consider Australia as a tourism destination. It would be horrible to see that drop off right at a time when they're in crisis.
Oh, definitely. And, the managing director of Tourism Australia, which is Australia's tourism agency, actually said that it's more important than ever that people visit right now. And, while the bushfires continue to impact parts of the country, again, many places are unaffected. So I think that's really like the resounding message here.
Yeah, absolutely. One interesting story that I got from a friend who lives in Australia, and he lives kind of bordering the Indian Ocean. He said, while the fires are still far away, even the locals are nervous enough that everyone has kind of a plan for, how they would evacuate. And he said that he has bought life jackets that he's stacked by his front door, knowing that in the very slim chance that the fire should come anywhere near him, he could take his chance out in the ocean, which was just an absolutely terrifying image.
Gosh, that is very scary. I think even like the scale of the evacuation so far has been very intense. I mean, I think the government actually said it was bringing in large scale military assets to try and tame the fires. And it's something to definitely care about and be concerned about. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, thousands of homes have burned down. At the last number that I saw was something like 25 people had died. And it's, I think we're now saying maybe billions of animals have been affected. So it's definitely a big deal. And when I say, be cautious, but still go, I also mean definitely take the time to care and see if you can help out. The Times has a story about ways that you can help out.
Yes, and I'll link to that story, some of your regular coverage and your article in the show notes.
Great, thank you.
So we want to acknowledge the seriousness of the fires, but I also want folks to remember you can help the country by going and by donating to some of those places that the New York Times sends you. So Tariro, thank you so much. And we will keep an eye on the situation and update on Out of Office.
Thanks so much, Kiernan.
Now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
So, Kiernan, that was a really good interview, and I have to say, I am happy to hear that Australia is so huge, and that
was that news?
On the map, on my map, it just looks small. But it is the size of the continental United States, which is a large, pretty large country.
The scale is large, for sure.
Now, one of the things you didn't mention, and it's been, I think, one of the amazing things about what's been happening on the internet around this tragedy is, have you heard about the get a nude photo if you donate to Australia?
No.
Yeah. So all these nude models, both women for folks like you, and men for folks like me. If you donate $10 to the Australian wildfires, we'll send you a personal nude photo, and this has become a sort of a viral thing that's happening.
Oh my!
And even the New York Times has written about this, and
well, I got to do a follow-up interview then.
Yeah. So, folks, if you're going to donate, and we think that you should, just think about what nude model you're donating to, and you'll get your personalized Australia photo.
Thank you very much for that important update, Ryan. And as always, I will include that in the show notes, as promised, along with all the charities that one could give to support the folks in Australia. To tackle the segment that we're in, we are in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. And this is where you and I each take a moment to take a breath, to meditate, to make sure that we are prioritizing travel in our lives, and to share out with the audience one thing that we have seen or done or experienced, or maybe we cooked it, maybe we bought it, something that we did that week that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. Now, Ryan's fresh back from vacation, so I expect that your wanderlust is it's bursting. You're totally full.
Yeah, it's as full as can be. I'm so happy to be at my kitchen table right now. Podcast recording studio table.
But very, very happily, you and I have the same last stop this week, right? So you tell me, what is your last stop this week, Ryan?
Well, every year, the New York Times, the failing New York Times, as I call it, they put out their list of the 52 places to travel for that year, and it is out.
Absolutely. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And, besides Christmas, of course, it's the most wonderful time of the year. And the list is out. It's always fascinating to see, how they choose and what surprises there are in there. And I was thinking for each of us for our last stop, why don't we just give some observations about the list they put out this year, and maybe like one or two places that are those kind of aspirational places for us personally.
I was really happy to see Paris on the list.
Oh, I mean, talk about an unsung destination.
Yeah, finally somebody's talking about how Paris is a place to travel to,
Yeah, I mean, I do have some tolerance for like when they decide to pick a place that is already on tourist maps but have something new to say about it. The Paris one surprised me. The one for me on the list that was similar was Austin, Texas, where I feel like that has kind of been on the tourist radar. You go down there, it's like every bachelor party and bachelorette party. I happen to have a brother-in-law that lives there, so I've spent a lot of time in Austin. It's a great city, but I don't think it's something that's being discovered.
No. But there's some old favorites on the list too. But there's like a lot of old favorites on the list, like Copenhagen, which is a great town, which I've been to several times and we haven't done an episode on. Happy to see that made the list. Now, I was a little surprised, I have to tell you, because for work, both of us, I think, in our work lives have been a lot to our nation's capital.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we're going to do an episode about our nation's capital very soon. But I was shocked to see that was the number one city on the list. I'm on the Amtrak regional train to D.C., trying to buy all the miserable people making PowerPoints on their little IBM laptops.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but boy, do I.
Boy, do you. And so I'm looking around. I'm like, none of these people look like they're going to the most exciting place in the world right now. We all look miserable at 6:45 in the morning, and we're like barely at a Newark airport.
So I will say, it's always been a question for me on this list whether it is meant to be seen as a ranking. I don't think that it's meant to be as a ranking. In fact, I asked off air our guest whether because she was a contributor to it, and she said that she didn't commit one way or the other. So I don't want to do the headline that they picked DC as a number one destination, but I think this was a good place where they highlighted a few interesting things. Particularly, they talked about like the suffragette movement and the women's history that you can see in DC. I mean, this is an interesting aspect of a place. Similarly, with Paris, they talked about how it's becoming a green capital of the world, and I think they're responding to the Notre Dame fires like we did this year. So highlighting these places can be great.
This year's version is really all about sustainability. There's so many shout outs to cities and that are doing their best to be ethical and sustainable tourist destinations.
Now, Ryan, one that jumped out at me, number 36. Lima, Peru.
Yes.
This might call for a fourth episode.
I don't know that it does. I don't think the Lima scene changes that dramatically.
We should definitely at least post in the show notes back to the Great Peru trilogy that we had last year. Love Lima, Peru. Wonderful city. And I do feel like it's a city that people tend to go through and not give enough time to. So good for the New York Times for calling that out.
I mean, I think maybe they heard about it from you.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'll have to follow it. Maybe I should get some credit here.
Yeah.
Another category that jumped out to me, of course, appealed to me. These are my favorite ones on the list. Was there are a number of national parks mentioned, and so number 52 is Glacier National Park, which I've been to and I'm a huge fan of, along with Whitefish, Montana, which is nearby. But they also talk about the Transylvanian Alps. They talk about the Alps in Slovenia in another entry, another wonderful hiking adventure that I've done. And then there's one, number 11, the National Parks of China. And this picks up on what you were saying. There's a real green conservation theme here. But they're calling out how much China is putting resources into protecting its natural lands. That came as a surprise to me. And I don't often think of China as a nature destination, but this really changed my mind. I mean, the Giant Panda National Park, who's not going to want to go there?
I want to go there immediately. Giant Panda National Park. That sounds amazing.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of destinations that are more sort of Kiernan focused, right? They're a lot of outdoorsy desinations in this.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of a lot of beaches, a lot of mountains, and I wish they would put like the 52 cities to visit together.
Yeah, that's an interesting subset that they could do in a future year. I agree with you, but I have to say one of the things that I like is how they mix and match in this 52 list. That's what I like, the variety of what they bring in. So you got you got a whole country. They have Greenland on here, right? Yeah. And Greenland.
Haven't you done an episode on that? Greenland as in Iceland?
No. I did Iceland as in Iceland.
Oh, those are different places.
But I definitely think that it seems like Greenland is the new Iceland, where Iceland is on the tourist map and discovered, and the Times is arguing that Greenland should be next. And from what I understand, may soon be part of the United States. Now, Ryan, I'm wondering, was there like one destination on here that just captured your heart and your imagination? Maybe we could close out on that.
So, I have to say one of the places that popped out for me and has been on my list for a while, but this sort of just reinforces that, is Sicily.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, both because it looks incredibly beautiful, but because, some of my favorite natural wine, shout out to COS, C-O-S.
Brother.
And a lot of other great wine. I'm sure there's a lot of establishment wine also grown in Sicily. But they have this it's a volcanic island, right? So they have this great soil to grow wine, and it looks extraordinary. And I think if I was going to take any place off of this 52 list besides Austin, Texas, which is sounds great. Thank you, New York Times. I would think that Sicily would be my number one.
So for me, one that's just been in my imagination for a long time, and the beautiful photo that they feature on this just really made me yearn to go there, was Mongolia. And I love kind of exploring these countries that have great nature in them, to your point, picking up on that. But also last year, Catherine and I listened to an audiobook when we were on a road trip called The Dinosaur Artist. The Dinosaur Artist, it's by Paige Williams, and it tells the story of kind of the underworld of illegal fossil collecting and sales to rich people around the world. And it talks a ton about Mongolia, because Mongolia has extremely rich fossil beds. Right. And in the capital, Ulaanbaatar, there is a apparently extraordinary dinosaur museum. So I know I just picture going out into the Gobi Desert, going trekking, out hiking, and then kind of taking some time in the capital, learning a lot about those dinosaurs. And, trying to support a country that doesn't see as much tourism as it probably deserves, because it's hard to get to.
Yeah, and it's good. That's a good shout out too, right? Because it's not Austin, Texas. It's not Paris.
No. I would say that is particularly True. And I will say it's tourism slogan, Mongolia, nomadic by nature. That's a hell of a t-shirt.
Didn't we consider nomadic by nature for the slogan?
I think it was nomadic by nature, Buster Brown. But yeah, no, it was similar.
That's a call out.
Similar. All right, Ryan. Well, why don't we talk about what are we going to cover next time?
So next time we're going to talk about Medellin.
Finally, I was supposed to be this week, but I feel like it was important. We tackled an important topic this week. Right? You know, it was
this
important
is going to be
in the news. Yeah. Next week, city guide to your time in Medellin.
Exactly. And I think this is going to be the number one episode. It's going to explode on the world stage. So very excited to share with you everything there is to do in Medellin. And until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. Ryan, what kind of dinosaur do you most want to... If you could see a real dinosaur, what dinosaur would you choose?
A raptor.
Really? A raptor? See, that's Jurassic Park at work right there.
It most definitely is. I mean, I still don't know that I ever want to see a dinosaur, because if I saw them with their actual feathers, I would just start laughing.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
like, I can't take it. And the raptor would be coming up to me, and I'd be like, you look like a little bird.